Mark Johnson thought a weekend alone at his family's cabin in the California mountains would be exactly what he needed. Work stress had been eating at him for months, and his doctor suggested he take some time away from the city. The cabin near Lake Tahoe had been in his family for generations, a perfect retreat nestled among towering pine trees and complete isolation. Mark arrived on Friday evening just as the sun was setting behind the mountains. The cabin was exactly as he remembered from childhood visits, rustic but comfortable, with a stone fireplace and large windows overlooking the forest. He unpacked his groceries and settled in for what he hoped would be a peaceful weekend. The first night passed without incident. Mark slept better than he had in months, lulled by the sounds of wind through the trees and the distant call of owls. But Saturday night was different. Mark was reading by the fireplace when he first heard it. A soft tapping on the window behind him. He turned around but saw only darkness beyond the glass. The tapping stopped. He returned to his book, thinking it was probably just a branch blown by the wind. 10 minutes later, the tapping resumed. This time it was more deliberate. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. Mark got up and turned on the outside light. The porch was empty except for 2 old rocking chairs his grandmother had left there decades ago. No branches were close enough to touch the window. Mark checked all the windows and doors to make sure everything was locked. The cabin had been broken into by raccoons before. He didn't want any unwanted animal visitors. Everything was secure. He went back to reading, but the tapping continued. It seemed to be moving around the cabin from window to window. First the living room, then the kitchen, then his bedroom upstairs. Always the same pattern. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. By midnight, Mark was getting annoyed. He grabbed a flashlight and went outside to investigate. The mountain air was crisp and still. He walked around the entire cabin, shining his light into the trees and bushes. Nothing. But as he came back around to the front porch, he noticed something odd. The rocking chairs were moving. Just slightly, as if someone had been sitting in them moments before, but there was no wind. The night was completely still. Mark stood on the porch and called out, "Hello? Is someone out there? This is private property." His voice echoed through the trees, but there was no response. He waited a few minutes, then went back inside. The tapping resumed immediately, now coming from all sides of the cabin simultaneously. It was as if multiple people were surrounding the building, all tapping in perfect synchronization. Mark tried to ignore it, but the sound was maddening. He called his brother Tom, who lived in Sacramento. "Tom, I'm at the cabin and something weird is happening. Someone's outside tapping on the windows." "Probably just kids from the other cabins," Tom said. "You know how sound carries up there. Could be coming from anywhere." But Mark knew better. The nearest cabin was over 2 miles away, and the tapping was definitely coming from right outside his windows. He described the pattern to Tom, who suggested it might be an animal looking for food. "Animals don't tap in patterns, Tom. This is deliberate. Someone's out there." Tom offered to drive up, but it was a 3-hour trip, and Mark didn't want to overreact. They agreed that Mark would call back if things got worse. Things got worse. Around 1 a.m., the tapping stopped completely. Mark felt relieved and started getting ready for bed. But as he brushed his teeth in the upstairs bathroom, he heard a new sound. Footsteps on the roof. Someone was walking around on the roof directly above his head. Heavy footsteps moving slowly from one end of the cabin to the other. Mark grabbed his flashlight and went outside again, but from the ground, he couldn't see anyone on the roof. The footsteps continued for 20 minutes, then stopped. Mark waited outside for another 10 minutes, but heard nothing more. He went back inside and tried to sleep, but every creak of the old cabin made him jump. At 3 a.m., Mark was awakened by a sound that made his blood freeze. Someone was trying to open the front door. Not knocking, not banging, just quietly turning the handle and pushing against the door. The deadbolt held, but the door shook slightly with each attempt. Mark crept downstairs and peered through the front window. He could see a dark figure standing at the door, but the porch light cast strange shadows, making it impossible to make out any details. The figure seemed tall and thin, wearing what looked like dark clothing. The figure tried the door for several minutes, then moved to the kitchen window. Mark followed the sound, staying low and out of sight. Through the kitchen window, he could see the figure more clearly now. It appeared to be a man, but something was wrong with the way he moved. Too stiff, too unnatural. The man pressed his face against the kitchen window, and Mark gasped. In the dim light, he could see that the man's skin was pale, almost gray, and his eyes reflected the interior lights like an animal's. The man seemed to be staring directly at Mark, even though Mark was hidden behind the counter. Mark fumbled for his phone and called 911. The nearest sheriff's station was in the valley, at least 45 minutes away. The dispatcher said they would send someone as soon as possible, but Mark would have to wait. The man outside moved away from the kitchen window and began circling the cabin again. Mark could track his movement by the sound of footsteps crunching through the fallen leaves. The man was taking his time, checking every window, every door, looking for a way in. Mark remembered that his grandfather had kept a hunting rifle in the coat closet. He found it and checked to make sure it was loaded. His hands were shaking, but the weight of the rifle gave him some comfort. The man outside had returned to the front door and was now doing something different. Instead of trying the handle, he was scratching at the wood around the lock. Mark could hear the sound clearly. A rhythmic scraping, as if the man was using his fingernails or maybe a knife. Mark positioned himself at the top of the stairs where he could see the front door but remain hidden. The scratching continued for what felt like hours. Mark checked his phone repeatedly, hoping to see headlights from a police car, but the forest remained dark. At 4:30 a.m., the scratching stopped. The silence was somehow more terrifying than the noise had been. Mark strained to listen but heard nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. Then came a sound that nearly made Mark scream. Someone was knocking on the back door. Not the deliberate tapping from before, but urgent, frantic knocking. As if someone was in trouble and needed help. Mark crept through the cabin to the back door, rifle in hand. The knocking continued, becoming more desperate. A voice called out, muffled by the door, "Help me. Please, someone's chasing me. Let me in." It sounded like a woman's voice, young and terrified. Mark's instincts told him to help, but something felt wrong. He had been watching the front of the cabin for hours, and no one had come or gone. How had someone gotten to the back door without him hearing them? "Who are you?" Mark called through the door. "What's wrong?" "My name is Jennifer. I was hiking and got lost. There's someone in the woods. He's been following me for hours. Please, I just need to use your phone." Mark hesitated. The voice sounded genuine, but the timing was too coincidental. "Where are you from?" How did you find this cabin? I saw your lights. Please, he's coming. I can hear him in the trees. Mark looked through the back window but couldn't see anyone. The voice was definitely coming from right outside the door, but no one was visible. I'm going to call the police for you, Mark said. They're already on their way. You'll be safe in a few minutes. The knocking stopped immediately. No response. Mark waited, listening carefully. After several minutes of silence, he heard footsteps moving away from the back door, but they seemed to be going up instead of down. Someone was climbing onto the roof again. The footsteps moved across the roof slowly, then stopped directly above Mark's head. Something was lowered past the living room window. It looked like a rope or maybe hair. Long, dark strands swaying in the breeze. Mark backed away from the window and raised the rifle. Whatever was on his roof wasn't human. No person can move the way this thing moved, or hang things from the roof like that. The sheriff's deputy arrived at sunrise, just as the first light was filtering through the trees. Mark had spent the entire night huddled in the upstairs bedroom, rifle across his knees, listening to the sounds of something moving around the cabin. Deputy Martinez was a local who knew the area well. He searched the grounds thoroughly, but found no evidence of an intruder. No footprints, no scratches on the doors, nothing. You sure you want dreaming? Deputy Martinez asked. Sometimes city folks come up here and the isolation gets to them. Your mind can play tricks on you. But Mark knew what he had experienced. He packed his things and left that morning, never to return. Before he drove away, he asked Deputy Martinez about the history of the area. Oh, there are lots of stories about these woods, the deputy said. Native Americans used to say this whole area was cursed. Something about angry spirits trapped in the trees. But that's just folklore. Mark drove back to Los Angeles and never spoke about what happened at the cabin. He sold his share of the property to his brother Tom, who thought he was crazy for giving up such a beautiful retreat. But Tom's opinion changed 6 months later when he decided to spend the weekend at the cabin. The tapping started on his first night there. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, moving from window to window, circling the cabin like a predator stalking its prey. Tom lasted 2 hours before he packed his car and drove back to Sacramento. The next week, he put the cabin up for sale. It's been on the market for 3 years now, and the price keeps dropping. But somehow, no one who visits the property ever makes an offer. The real estate agent says it's because the cabin needs too much work. But the locals know better. They know that some places are meant to stay empty. Some things are better left alone. Becca Martinez had just moved into her dream house in a quiet suburb outside of Phoenix, Arizona. After months of apartment living, she was thrilled to finally have her own space, complete with a backyard and garage. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Well-maintained houses, friendly neighbors, and a genuine sense of community.